as part of my time working on this, I decided that I could leverage kind of host prerogative and give you a short briefing on what is Globus. And many of you are familiar with us from the HPC realm, especially our prior incarnations with grid FTP and certificates and other things. But I want to make sure that I level set you on what is Globus today. And one of the important factors to know about Globus is I stand up here and I look like I'm from a software company. And Globus itself operates and behaves a lot like a nonprofit software company. However, I'm an employee of the University of Chicago and I have a joint appointment at Argonne National Lab. And I work closely with the ALCF in developing data services, and I spend a lot of time working on projects like my current one with the NIH doing integration of the Globus stack. So we are you, we are part of you, and we have some unique benefits when you think about the solutions that you can choose. So we feel your pain because we also deal with grants and proposals and research projects and everything else. But we also have a sustainability model based on subscriptions to institutions which allow us to be around and ensure the continuation of our services for the long term. So we all see our slides on research data management today, and I love this one because you know you've seen this. You have seen the drives on the desk. And is there a clipboard with the number 88 and a note on it somewhere that a grad student's going like, oh, where is my data? It's a number 88. So the question is, how do we move our data, share our data, discover our data, reproduce it, grant access, collaborate, stuff like that? And so Globus is primarily, our bread and butter is around a few key data services, primarily data transfer. We will get your data from point A to point B reliably, or we'll tell you if something goes wrong, and it's usually not our fault. It's the site administrator for the endpoint running the server. And we talk to a lot of different storage systems. One of the reasons that we're here and we participate in OpenSFS is that POSIX is the de facto one that we always talk to, and we want to do more with Lustre and be Lustre aware in terms of performance. But these services are not just managed on your systems, they talk to our platform in the sky, which is the software as a service. So when you're dealing with researchers and they're asking, how do I get my data from this point to this point? It's as easy as saying, go to this website, type in the name of our endpoint, type in the name of the other endpoint, pick your files, fire and forget, and move your data. One of our big things for folks is campus bridging. And what we mean is that both inside your campus, where you're dealing with labs and HPC centers and other things and research groups, and going outside your campus is a place that we fit very well. So imagine you've got a laptop and you've got some data on it and you want to get the data to an HPC system. We use this when I was at UCSD. This was one of our primary tools for saying, if you want to get data on Comet, on Triton, on TSCC, on Gordon, et cetera, install Globus Connect Personal on your laptop, upload it, download it. Install it on the lab server, upload it, download it. Mahidar Tatnini would say this all the time. I think he had a canned email message for this. One of the reasons I joined Globus, by the way, was because I saw us solving problems when I was in HPC. And of course, we do large-scale capacity. Some of you know Eli Dart from ESNet. He has a demo where he picks like a massive amount of data and starts his presentation, kicks off the transfer, does his presentation, and then shows that it completes in time. And that's because ESNet uses us as one of their benchmarks for their network. By the way, for those of you not familiar with it, the Energy Science Network is run by the Department of Energy to provide high-performance bandwidth across the various national labs. Instrumentation. A lot of us are dealing with sequencers, cryo-EM, other things. Globus, and especially the platform and the tools around automation, make it very simple to do things, for example, to have a core service. If you have a recharge service that is taking data from external customers and then providing it back out for a fee, it is relatively straightforward to set up a workflow that will drop your data on some storage, open up a directory with access controls to the external collaborator, send them a note, and allow them to access their data. Collaboration. Transfer relies on something we call Globus Auth. And Globus Auth is an identity federation that talks OAuth and OIDC and has in-commons and several other identity providers. They're up to like almost 500 now. If you are an academic, you probably can log into Globus. If you know somebody in academia, they can probably lock into Globus. The national labs, their identities are in there. Globus Auth allows you to link identities. And what that means is if you've got emails from 10 different places, we can aggregate them. And that way, if you know a collaborator only through a single identity, you can help manage their access to data only on that identity. So for example, if I still had a UCSD address, you could share with my UCSD address. I could log on with my Argonne password and still access my data. So it really enables collaboration in the fact that we're dealing with a web of different institutions and different identities. Your Google ID and your GitHub ID alone are not enough, and as much as we'd like to say that ORCID will solve it, it's not enough. We also have capabilities around allowing access under your control as the administrator to the public. And this is both by GCS, the Globus Connect server software, or what is becoming available now is HTTPS. You now have the capability to stand up endpoints at your boundary on your DMZ and enable HTTPS access. There is no longer a grid FTP and SSH silo necessary. This is something I fought at SDSC and barely was just starting to make headway on, and now we're seeing it to have incredibly easy uses. Imagine building portals to data that can embed links and files and images directly off of your Lustre systems. You can do that. You can also imagine having a lightweight authentication layer so that people can use Python scripts to easily push data into the system over HTTPS. This means that all those web developers who get frustrated when they start having to deal with idiosyncrasies of our HPC systems now have new capabilities they can access. I will blow through this one because it's the research data lifecycle about how you can do various things like transfer, share, et cetera, including publish. All right. So this is the conceptual architecture. Endpoints. Endpoints are the installation of the Globus Connect server software, and there is a control channel going up to our platform in the cloud. We provide a lot of tools and capabilities in terms of logging, monitoring, management, so that you manage your storage, you manage the access. You can have your firewall rules to control which endpoints talk to which. You can have logs to see who is moving what data. You have other controls at your fingertips. For example, if your storage is going down for maintenance, you can pause all transfers to and from that storage. And if you imagine that makes the users a lot happier because they don't notice that their transfer is paused, they just know it takes a little bit longer. So you can also tell when transfers are failing, and maybe you can talk to the site administrator at another site saying, hey, I've got this user trying to send data to you and your endpoint keeps going down. Because you can monitor that through the cloud control channel. Sharing. This is a topic that comes up quite a bit. Sharing is a very simple concept for those of us who understand Linux and user spaces and accounts and stuff. Sharing is giving a user the ability to control who can access their data managed through ACLs within Globus. All access via Globus happens under the local user account of the user. We basically spin up a thread under that user's name. And so that means that all data access for RP Wagner is going to happen under the RP Wagner POSIX account on my storage system. However, I can log in and grant SARP access, but when some SARP comes in to access it, he doesn't have an account on the system. Globus is mediating the access based on the directories I've shared with him, but the actual file access on the system happens under my account. I'm the one who has the control. I'm the one who has the authority. I cannot grant SARP access to anything I wouldn't normally have access to. All right. So besides the fact that I have a deep resonant voice and very convincing, why would you want to use us? Number one, it is simple. For a lot of your researchers who say like, I don't want to use the command line, this is complicated, I don't want to use your script, stuff like that, you point them at a website. We talk to HPSS, we talk to S3, we're going to talk to Google Storage soon, we talk to SpectraLogic, we talk to any POSIX-based file system, and we're talking to more all the time. We talk to Google Drive. So this allows us that a researcher can go to the same pane of glass and talk to any storage system that you have connected to it, or that anyone else is connected to it if they have permissions using the same UI. We also, unlike a lot of other solutions, we don't control the storage. We do not take ownership of the data. It's your data, you manage it, you define the workflows. It's a nice decoupling of concerns. We don't want to ingest, manage, and control your data. That's your job. You define what goes on. We just want to be effective in our handling in it. Reliability and performance. All of our transfers are asynchronous. The HTTPS ones are not, because they are straight HTTPS reads. But if you're using GCS, it's fire and forget. You select your files, you let them go. We move petabytes, we move many small files. We've had transfers run for months, and that was just because it was an endpoint overseas, and it took a very long time. We move data all around the world continuously, and we love to saturate networks. We have the ability to, the endpoints can scale. You'll have a single logical name, but it can be spread across multiple servers. There is a huge financial benefit to the cloud model. Essentially, because we can distribute the operational costs across our subscribers, whenever we add a new feature at the request of one or two, everyone benefits. We're not just building single solutions that get deployed at one single premises. We're building something that everyone can leverage. And we have a command line API that is a Python wrapper that talks to Globus auth. So if you like to be an administrator who writes scripts and cron jobs, you can do it. We have a REST API so that everything you can do through the web interface, you can do through the platform. And that's largely what my team does. We work with developers, or we provide developers to help people leverage Globus through the REST API. And we've been growing for a long time. Globus is in a lot of places. It's at most of the national labs, if not all of them. It's at many federal agencies. It's at most universities. So generally speaking, more and more of the data that you're looking to access is more and more likely to have Globus in front of it. All right, so just briefly, when we talk about software, because I know that's something that we're all asking, like, okay, great, you've got something in the sky. How do I actually use this? We have two tools, but they're both called Globus Connect. So this is the stuff you install. Number one, Globus Connect Personal. You've all seen the non-administrator installation of lightweight tools like this. It's a client-side tool that can go behind firewalls, et cetera, and can access stuff. So I run it on my laptop, and I use it to move presentations back and forth or access stuff. And it's also really convenient if somebody's in a lab, and they're like, hey, I got data on this Linux box. How do I get it to the HPC system across campus? They can throw this onto their local user account and run it real quick and move the data to and from without having to do a heavyweight install. So it's a single user solution. Of course, then, sorry, most of you will be dealing with Globus Connect Server. Installation of this, for any of you who dealt with the Globus toolkit, please, let's not say those words again. These are prepackaged RPMs. They have clear instructions on how to install. The configuration is very manageable. We install these all the time. And it will, if you just install it, all your local POSIX accounts can log in, access it, and stuff like that. But you can do more than that, like integrate it with your local OAuth or OID, or sorry, IAM solution on campuses and things like that. So Globus Connect Server also scales. So you can have multiple ones for performance. Most of the big sites do. And the protocol we use to move data is still called GridFTP, and that is where we get the performance. We also have the ability to talk to other things like up here, like you see S3, Hadoop, Ceph, stuff like that, Google Drive. There is some identity providers built in. That is if you're running locally, otherwise you integrate it with your campus. Research workflows. So think about Globus as your REST API, your library in the cloud. And so if you are building workflows, for example, HSM, one of the things I've meant to be working on for a while is the fact that Globus talks to a lot of different back-end storages, and we have asynchronous transfer. I'm kicking myself because I'm talking to John Hammond for a year now on like what it would take to do something like Stefan did around lightweight HSM solutions using Globus. Again, consistent interface, just talk to GCS in different places. NCAR's Research Data Archive uses Globus. climate science projects like CMIP use Globus. There's a lot of things that make good for federations, data portals, science gateways, stuff like that. And you can choose how you access it. You can go through the web, you can use the CLI, you can use the REST API. All the tools that a user would use, you can enable programmatically. Auth, file sharing, transfer, replication, etc. Skip this because I'm running out of time. If you are a developer and you want to play with it, we have lots of stuff that you can use. We have an example data portal. We've got our SDK. When it comes to Jupyter, by the way, a lot of you using Jupyter? Many? Yes, okay, good, thank you. We have Globus auth integration with Jupyter Hub. If you want to trivially enable institutional login to your Jupyter Hub instance, which you can also, by the way, restrict to your campus identity if you want to, go to the Jupyter Hub OAuthenticator repo, read the instructions on setting up Globus, deploy your Jupyter Hub server. Zero to Jupyter Hub is the ability to deploy that on Google Compute Engine. We've integrated into there. We also have the ability to pass the tokens into the environment of the Jupyter Notebook so that you can access REST APIs from within the notebook. I'm giving a presentation on that in 3.5 hours in downtown. All right, so wrapping up, we get a lot of support from a lot of different places. Like I said, I'm University of Chicago, I work with Argonne, but Amazon's given us some credits, the Department of Energy, the NSF, the NIH, NIST, Sloan Foundation, these are all folks that have helped us become what we are to provide these services. We have a sustainability model. This is a key thing, right? So you know what happens when grants come in. They end, the project dies, the services go away. I find that very frustrating. I chose this team because they've been around 20 years and we are trying to innovate in how do you provide continuity of services. And so by working with institutions and having a subscription model, we're able to provide free services via a freemium model and then enhanced services for subscribers. We've actually moved 400 petabytes. We typically have about 800 users a day, creeping up to 1,000. We have 14,000 active users. 3 months. I want you to tell me that you have had a server running a single task reliably for 3 months. Not just uptime, actually running the task. So yes, we managed a transfer that took a whole season. Our uptime is limited by S3 going down. That's the last time we had a major failure. So we are pretty reliable. And we've moved to petabyte. Point, click, go. That petabyte goes from one site to another. And these are some of the institutions that subscribe and work with us. So you may see your name up here. You may see the name of a collaborator. And 1 minute extra. Lots of places you can go if you want to learn more about Globus. I'm sorry I won't get to stay around much longer because I do have to go back to downtown Chicago, but you can reach me at rick@globus.org. I'm still on the OpenSFS mailing list, and it has been fantastic to be part of this community.
Thanks very much. Do we have any questions?
I suppose I could have just asked you this before, but I'll put you on the spot. So I see on the list, it's a lot of academic, you mentioned academic DOE, stuff like that. And I've looked into Globus before, but how does it work if you have a SaaS model in the cloud, but everything you're talking to is essentially air-gapped?
So this is where the ESNet's Science DMZ model comes in. You have to have something on your site that talks to the public network. And the question is, do you put it behind your firewall or not? The ESNet Science DMZ model is you pick a few boxes and you anoint them as your data transfer nodes. And you lock them down so that they only talk certain things like Globus. And they are not for users to log into. They are not for jobs to run on. And this way you can control the local host firewall rules, et cetera, and have all the security in place so that you trust them to move data from point A to point B. And because you have your firewall rules, you can do things like limit the data channel to only certain other sites. You limit the control channel to only talk to the IP address that we assure you are the ones that Amazon is giving us. So that's the model. So you air gap everything else, and then you have this very highly trusted set of nodes that you monitor the heck out of that are allowed to talk out. By the way, ESNet, fasterdata.net, good place to go for all of this.
Does Globus keep track of any authentication or other transfer record in addition to the server endpoints?
In terms of authentication, we provide the authentication layer, and as part of the logs that you can receive via the endpoint management API, you can track things like that. So when you talk about, do we track the authentications to our service? Yes. Yes, and by the way, we are going through HIPAA right now, so we can be signed BAAs. So we are going through a revamp of our ops system to be more security compliant with HIPAA and 800-171, I think. So compliance is a big deal for us.
One of the reasons I ask about it is back in the days when you are using the Globus URL copy, the command line interface, you used to provide the so-called XIO pipe mechanism. So you can actually use the additional filtering program called in externally. So you can have Globus, the URL copy transaction, greedy FTP transaction record, but it doesn't show the actual content of the blocks being transferred.
So first of all, I think it's important to point out, Globus URL copy was the tool that would talk to the two endpoints and initiate the transfer. Globus URL copy does not exist anymore from our perspective. It is out there as part of the open source stuff. You can still download and install. What Globus URL copy did, which essentially managed the control channels to the endpoints, now is what is residing in the cloud. And if you have a managed endpoint, all of the transfer logs, exactly what you're saying, which is the metadata about it, who did it from point to the other point, you can access those logs as the administrator of that endpoint. Who is moving data in and out, what files they've moved, but you cannot see the content because the content always goes between the two endpoints.
So that's slightly different from what I'm asking. So the XIO mechanism, because of the, you can insert certain other programs to, to the stream. So
Right, I believe that no longer works.
not allowed in your Globus one. Okay, thanks.
And Globus URL copy is not a thing anymore.
Just a non-technical question. Do you envision having a connector for box storage?
If my boss was here, he'd be he'd be hanging his head because we get asked about Box all the time. Yeah, Box is very much on our radar. Generally speaking, when these connectors come up, what we look for is critical mass in terms of people that are looking for it, and we try to work with you on development timeframes and stuff like that. Honestly, HIPAA and some of the other needs for the NIH are kind of driving us right now. But yes, once we get the Google Cloud connector completed, Box is very much on our radar.